Hello, welcome to today's German New Medicine tutorial. Our topic for today is thyroid conditions. My name is Dr. Melissa Sell, and I will be guiding you through this tutorial. And I'm very excited to talk about the thyroid because I've had a lot of friends, people my age, who have dealt with thyroid conditions. And looking at it from the point of view of the 5 biological laws has been very enlightening to me, and I hope it will be the same for you. This presentation is based on information published on www.learninggnm.com. We thank the author, Carolyn Markelin, PhD, for her consent to use the GNM material, including the subject-related diagrams, for the production of this video. This information is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Okay, so let's talk about the anatomy of the thyroid and what it does. So there are 3 parts to the thyroid glands. It's the thyroid gland itself, the thyroid ducts, and the parathyroid glands. And each of those different areas have a different biological conflict associated. So we will address all 3 of them in this presentation. So the thyroid itself, what is it? It is an endocrine gland, and it produces thyroid hormone called thyroxine, T3 and T4, and it releases it into the bloodstream. And thyroxine, its function is to regulate how fast food turns into available energy. So it affects things like your metabolic rate and protein synthesis. The thyroid itself also stores iodine and produces calcitonin. And the thyroid is a endodermal tissue and is controlled from the brainstem. So let's take a look at the embryology and evolution of the thyroid. This is very interesting. So during embryology, the thyroid originates in the oropharynx, so up at the back of the throat. And then it descends through the tongue, the hyoid bone, and the throat down to its final resting place at the front of the throat. And there is a connection point to its original location called the thyroglossus duct. Now, the thyroid gland used to be an exocrine gland, and what that means is it secreted thyroxine directly into the digestive tract instead of into the blood like it does today. And this brings up the original ring formation of the creatures that evolved later on to be humans. And so if you look over at this left-hand side at the original ring form, that is before the gullet ruptured. And so all creatures were these ring formations with one single gullet in and out. Instead of having a mouth and a rectum, it was just one hole. And then you could see that there was the ingoing gullet, the ingoing section, and then there is this counterclockwise pattern from right all around to the left, and then it would exit at the left and go out that same gullet. And so this ring formation has carried over evolutionarily into how our brain stem is arranged. And you can see the final embryo when the gullet ruptured. We now have 2 openings, one at the mouth and then one at the rectum. But it follows that same formation of going from right counterclockwise around till the exit. So now the relevance of that for the thyroid is that instead of just excreting thyroid hormone into the digestive tract, now it's an endocrine gland and it secretes it into the bloodstream. And so if you look over on the left-hand side, that is a top view of the brainstem, and you can see the different control centers do go around in that counterclockwise formation from right to left. And you can see the thyroid gland is on the right side, right there at the center. And the right half of the thyroid gland is controlled from the right half of the brainstem. So there is no crossover correlation with the brainstem related organs. There is a crossover correlation you'll see later on with the cerebral cortex. And so the relevance of this is it depends on the side of the thyroid that is affected when you have your conflict has to do with this ingoing and outgoing morsel. And so when you look at that right half, again, that signifies that is symbolic of how it used to be with the ingoing morsel and then the outgoing morsel on the left. Because when we're talking of the thyroid conflict, so in German New Medicine, all biological symptoms, every kind of symptom, everything that we think of as a disease, it is initiated, it's triggered, it is set off by a conflict, by something unexpected that happens in your surroundings. And this unexpected event causes your body to go into sympathetic mode. It goes into a responsive, adaptive mode in order for your maximal chance of survival. And so the specific conflict related to the thyroid is about speed. It's about speeding things up, revving up your metabolism. And so the reason that the thyroid would get revved up in this way was because it perceived a too slow conflict. And so again, remember that we have these ancient bodies that evolved over millions of years and went through many different stages. And now when we think about catching a morsel and having to catch our food, it's not a concern in our modern lives. But in our ancient lives, it was very important that you were able to catch a morsel, that you were able to get some type of animal to feed your family for dinner. And if you weren't able to, it's very possible that would mean that you and your family would die. And so the importance of your body having this response to a conflict of feeling too slow, it's like, all right, well, let's increase the thyroid hormone so we can speed things up so that you can not be too slow anymore and you can get whatever you need to get. So the ingoing morsel, this has something to do with not being fast enough to catch it, not being able to, fast enough to get the position or the promotion or the business, the money that you need to survive. You weren't fast enough. You were too slow to get something. And so that will affect the right half of the thyroid, the ingoing morsel, not being fast enough to catch the morsel. And then the left side, the outgoing morsel, is being too slow to eliminate a morsel. You were too slow to finish a paper, to sell enough product, to sell your stocks. Think about playing the stock market. If you wait a day, if you wait an hour sometimes between selling your stocks, it could be making $1 million or losing $1 million if you were too slow to get rid of something. If someone else did something first and you felt, I could have done that, and you felt too slow. If you didn't leave somewhere soon enough and something happened as a result of you being somewhere too long, you were too slow. Something like an apology or a proposal expressed too late, missing the boat, bad timing can affect you in having this type of biological conflict. So these type of issues are commonly seen with people who have competitive jobs with a get it done kind of attitude. So managers who have quotas to meet and things that they need to push other people to do. Sales representatives, athletes, entrepreneurs, people with deadline pressures, network marketing. You see these people that need to, sell a certain amount by a certain date so they can move up in their company. And if they don't do it, if they're not fast enough to catch the morsel, or if they were too slow to get it, you can see how this would cause a conflict. Journalism. So you've got a deadline. That paper, that article better be on my desk by 6 p.m. or else you lose your job. So that might cause your thyroid to kick into high gear. Manufacturing. Again, deadlines, quotas. People with a pressure to keep it up, or people that are feeling behind. So if you're working 2 jobs, you're trying to make ends meet. Single parents who've got a lot on their plate. Kids or adolescents that are being pushed by parents, teachers, and coaches. Now, the thing to remember with all conflicts is that it all depends on an individual's perception of the situation. And so that means that just because you are a salesperson with deadlines does not mean that you have a thyroid conflict. It means that some people in that situation may experience a thyroid conflict. I was talking with a woman who had a thyroid tumor, and we were discussing, she was curious about what could have caused it. And so I presented her with this material, and she said, I wonder if it was because she had a competitive job that she won over a different person for a promotion, but she had to work alongside this person for a year, and she expressed that person had all sorts of issues. And so she really had to work hard and be out ahead in order to get this promotion. And so this was an ongoing thing for a year, working alongside this person. She wants to get this promotion. That very well could have been the issue that caused the formation of a tumor on her thyroid. Another option, she said that she was curious because it seemed as though it had been there for a long time, and she, as a child, suffered some sexual abuse. And so her body may have perceived being too slow to leave a certain place where this predator or this person that abused her was. And so you can see how, depending on her perception, depending on how she felt about it, depending on whether the tumor was on the right side or the left side, you can see if it was on the left side, it could have been, oh, she wasn't able to leave somewhere soon enough, so she felt too slow and maybe responsible for this abuse that took place, or not fast enough could have been the job issue if it was on the right side. And so that's why all of these details are so interesting to look into when you are considering what you've got going on personally. So let's look at the psyche-brain organ correlation, because the moment that you have the conflict of feeling too slow, simultaneously, you are affected at the level of the psyche, the brain, and the organ, specifically in the brainstem, and then the organ level is the proliferation of thyroid gland cells. Let's look at the second biological law. So this is the law of two phases. This is a very profound and important part of German New Medicine, and understanding where you are in the two-phase pattern is very important for knowing what to expect as far as symptoms, what to expect as far as what's going to be happening moving forward. So during conflict activity, so this is when you are actively feeling too slow. The thing just happened, you're feeling rushed, you're feeling in a hurry, you're feeling like you've got to, make something happen. And so what's going on is you are nervous, you're irritable, your body is sympathetic active. And so instead of the normal day-night rhythm, you're not sleeping at night. You're waking up at 2, 3, 4 a.m. and you're thinking about this problem. Your body is increasing the thyroxine production. We've got thyroid gland proliferation, and this is always proportional to the intensity of the conflict. So if it's the more serious, the more pressing, the more urgent it is, the faster the body is going to proliferate these cells. And this will form if it's left going on for a long period of time. Because the thing with GNM and the thing with these conflicts is we can have brief bouts of conflicts that, happen all of a sudden. You have kind of this surge, and then depending on how aware and conscious you are of your emotional state, of your physiological state, you can say, oh wow, I'm really I need to take a step back. I need to relax. This is, this is getting out of hand, and you're able to resolve conflicts a lot more quickly. But when things go on for a long time and when things are really intense, your body is always responding. Remember, your body is helping you. It wants you to survive. It wants you to, it's perceiving everything about this emotional state that you are in. And so it wants you to be able to speed up, get rid of the morsel, catch the morsel, do what you have to do. And so it may lead to something like a hot nodule or a compact cauliflower type growth, like this adenocarcinoma, secretory type, because it's secreting more thyroxine. Your blood pressure's up. You may have trouble breathing as this area of the thyroid is growing, as it's expanding. And so that may cause an issue with swallowing or with breathing. So psyche, brain, organ, you've got compulsive thinking, extra waking hours. There's a sharp ring formation in the brainstem. So there is always a measurable impact in the brain when you have a conflict. And for the endodermal derived tissue of the thyroid gland, it is in the brainstem. The organ is proliferation of the thyroid tissue. Conflict resolution. So this is always going to be the goal. We want to get to conflict resolution as quickly as possible, because conflicts will happen. We are caught off guard at times in our lives, and that is something that really, it's life. It's unavoidable that you cannot live in a plastic bubble and avoid conflict altogether. But what you can do is become resilient, become a person who is very sensitive to their own emotional states and in tune with their body, so that you notice, ooh, I'm kind of freaking out about this right now, and I'm aware that this may be causing my body a biological conflict. And so that's why awareness of German New Medicine is such a powerful thing, just in and of itself. Just knowing that every time that you are emotionally freaking out, your body is rallying resources to help you. And because you understand that there's going to be a healing process afterwards, you don't want this conflict state to go on for very long, because you know that the body will have to heal afterwards. So conflict resolution, you're no longer feeling too slow. The best thing is a natural resolution. So you get the job, you get the promotion, you fire the employee, you do whatever you needed to do. You catch the morsel, get rid of the morsel. And so you're able to just relax because you got through it. Also, if that's not a possibility, sometimes you don't get the job, but emotionally releasing your attachment to it, acceptance, forgiveness, finding a new perspective, shifting your priorities, seeing a bigger picture. And so sometimes it is helpful to have a coach, which is what I do, as well as helping people to work through these conflicts, give you different options, different perspectives, different points of view that you can look at the situation in new lights. So some guiding thoughts, if you are struggling with this, is everything happens in the perfect time. I'm fast enough. I'm satisfied with my speed. Nobody's timing me. I set the tempo for my life. And so meditating on these, thinking about these things, and finding that relaxation point, that point of relief, and allowing you to move into the healing phase. So remember, you were in prolonged sympathetic dominance. And so your body was adapting. You were in an adaptive state at that time. Now the body swings the pendulum back the other way, and now we are in prolonged parasympathetic dominance, because now that site, that tissue that was affected, is now a construction zone, because we built up additional thyroid gland tissue cells while you were conflict active. Now the body is going to break those tissue cells down. It has a plan. And so what happens is there's swelling. All healing happens in a fluid environment. And so the area becomes swollen. It may be warm. You may have difficulty breathing and swallowing because of that swelling. Night sweats. So night sweats are a hallmark sign that your body, the tubercular bacteria, are at work. They're doing their thing. Tubercular bacteria are an ancient type of mycobacteria that evolved alongside with our bodies, and they help us when we have tumors that grow during the conflict active phase. So in the endodermal derived tissues, there is mycobacteria, very ancient bacteria, very old tissue type, and so they work in harmony together. And your brain tells these bacteria to get to work. And so what they start to do is they decompose the additional thyroid gland tissue cells that were built up during conflict activity. And so if the bacteria are unavailable, if you've been on antibiotics, if you've been hospitalized a lot and had a lot of antibiotics in your life, the growth will not be able to be decomposed by your body, which is the normal process. And so what happens is, in these cases, the tumor will encapsulate. Now, having this encapsulated tumor, it still produces thyroxine, because that's what it's designed to do. And so you may have lasting hyperthyroidism because you've got additional thyroid tissue even after the conflict has been resolved. And so in these cases, surgery may be necessary to remove some of that excess tissue. Otherwise, you'll be dealing with the symptoms of hyperthyroidism indefinitely. Now, this is a very important thing to keep in mind, is that all hypothyroidism is always preceded by hyper. So hyperthyroidism is, again, this is the state that your body is in when it is experiencing a conflict of being too slow. Now, when we are swinging back into this healing phase, there may be a period of time where you have hypothyroidism, while the body is breaking down that tumor that was built up. And when you have continual conflict relapses, where the body never makes it fully through the healing phase before you are relapsed into a feeling too slow conflict once again, what happens is the body, you're building up and breaking down, and you're building up and breaking down. And what happens during this process is you may lose thyroid tissue. And so this may result in hypothyroidism, because you become conflict active and then gone into the healing phase so many times that we're breaking down tissue that is normally going to be producing the proper amount of thyroid hormone that is needed. And so we'll discuss this again when we get to the section on Hashimoto's. So in the psyche, at this stage, you have resolved the problem. Your psyche is in a state of relief. In the brain, there is fluid in the brain as well, because it is in healing in the brainstem. So you may have some dull headache or dizziness. And then there is that tissue cell breakdown at the organ level. Epileptoid crisis. So this is always what happens halfway through the healing phase. So once you've gotten to the maximal point of swelling, the maximal point of edema, The body has a surge of sympathetic dominance, and the point of this is to squeeze out the additional edema, squeeze out that swelling so that we can finish up the healing phase. So sometimes you'll have, you'll have cold sweats or shivers and nausea and restlessness, muscle spasms all of a sudden, and that means that the healing phase is turning the corner, and we're going to move into the second half, which is continued remodeling, restoration of the area. We want to return to normal. We want to get you back to just normal thyroid function, normal cellular function. So let's look at the parathyroid gland. Now, the parathyroid functions differently than the thyroid gland itself, and you can see it's these small areas on the back of the thyroid. Now, it's also an endocrine gland, and it produces parathyroid hormone, and parathyroid hormone controls calcium regulation. So calcium in your bloodstream is necessary for proper muscle contraction. In order for you to squeeze a muscle, you need calcium. And so the conflict related to the parathyroid is a very specific nuance on the morsel conflict of being too slow. So it's specifically due to insufficient muscle activity. And so it does follow, again, the right half, left half, ingoing, outgoing morsel pattern. And this has to do with not being able to catch a morsel because of low calcium needed for muscle contraction. So maybe not feeling strong enough. Maybe this has to do with an athlete who didn't feel like they were strong enough to win the game, strong enough to lift the weights at the competition. And so not being able to get rid of a morsel due to low calcium needed for muscle contraction. And so this is just kind of a specific thing related to the parathyroid. And so this one is less common than thyroid conflicts. Same psyche-brain organ correlation, not fast enough due to low calcium, brainstem impact, and then proliferation of the parathyroid glands. Again, it follows the two-phase pattern during conflict activity of feeling too slow due to low calcium in the muscles. You are feeling nervous, irritable, overexcited, trouble sleeping. We've got increased parathyroid hormone production, as well as hypercalcemia, because that's the point of parathyroid hormone, is it releases calcium from your bones into the blood. So the parathyroid proliferation is proportional to the intensity of the conflict, just like we saw before, and the biological purpose is for adequate muscle contraction to increase the speed to catch or get rid of the desired morsel. Conflict resolution. We are no longer feeling too slow or unable to get at what we wanted. A few guiding thoughts for this: as my body is quick, responsive, ready, and able to do whatever is necessary. And then everything is always working out for me, knowing that you're never too slow, everything is always working out in perfect time. So here we have the healing phase. This is, again, where we move into prolonged parasympathetic dominance, pain due to swelling in the area, because all healing happens in a fluid environment. So the parathyroid area is swelling. We've got the night sweats. We've got the tubercular bacteria at work decomposing and breaking down those additional cells. And if there are no bacteria available, the growth will remain, and the person may have lasting hyperparathyroidism, and so lasting hypercalcemia. And so this is, again, a situation where surgery might be necessary to remove the additional cells so that we don't have all this extra PTH and calcium. Another thing to keep in mind, just like hypo and hyperparathyroidism, it's always hyper first. The body is always going to respond by increasing the amount of thyroid or parathyroid hormone, and then the swing back during this healing phase, and if there's breakdown, that's when hypoparathyroidism will come into play. And then there's also the option of continual conflict relapses, causing a prolonged decomposition process, which may lead to prolonged chronic low levels of calcium. The epileptoid crisis, just like before, surge of sympathetic dominance, which will move us, get the edema out of the area, and move you into the healing phase. And again, the goal here is let's just get back to normal parathyroid function and no longer being in an adaptive state. So let's talk about the thyroid duct. Now, the thyroid duct is different than the thyroid gland and the parathyroid gland. And you can see that's why we've got it in red. And the red is the ectoderm. And the ectoderm is the newest germ layer, and that is the controlled from the area of the cerebral cortex. So it's the youngest part of the brain and the newest development of tissue. So the thyroid duct branches throughout the thyroid. It's used to deliver thyroxine to the digestive system, like we mentioned before. Now it delivers it to the bloodstream, and it is lined with squamous epithelial tissue. So the thyroid duct is the impact in the area, the control center is the premotor sensory cortex. Now, there is a crossover correlation. So the left thyroid ducts are controlled from the right side of the brain, and the right are controlled from the left. And you can see that's that area right there at the front part of the brain. Now, keep in mind that the pharyngeal ducts are also controlled from this same location. And so the conflict will involve one or both of the tissues depending on the intensity. The pharyngeal ducts are what are affected in the case of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So the conflict related to the thyroid ducts is a female feeling powerless conflict or a male frontal fear conflict. And now the male-female interpretations of these conflicts has to do with hormone status, handedness, and laterality. And that's a topic for a whole tutorial all its own, but just know that the hormone status of a male or female will affect how certain conflicts impact them and which area of the brain will be affected. So feeling powerless conflict, this is feeling helpless. My hands are tied. There's nothing I can do. Not being in control of a situation, perhaps a decision that was made over your head. And then a fear, and a frontal fear specifically is the fear of heading into a dangerous situation or a danger heading towards you. This could be actual physical danger like a car accident or an attack from an animal or a person, or a perceived danger. So shocking news, a blow to the face, a confrontation. The most common frontal fear is a cancer fear or diagnosis. And so if a person, if they've got a family history of cancer or someone they care about dies of cancer, and they all of a sudden become very preoccupied with a cancer fear, this frontal fear, that will impact this front part of the brain and either affect the thyroid ducts or the pharyngeal arches. And once again, this all depends on individual perception. It's not that if you are worried about cancer from time to time that you have this conflict. It's a conflict that happens to some people in some situations. And now psyche, brain, organ. We've got the powerless or fear interpretation by the psyche. The premotor sensory cortex is impacted, and then there is erosion of the thyroid duct lining. And let's look at the two phases. While you're in conflict activity, while you're sympathetic active, there are erosions of the thyroid duct lining, again, proportional to the intensity of the conflict. The biological purpose of this is to allow more thyroxine to be delivered into the bloodstream. Now, ulcers are not visible, but they may be felt as slight pulling in the thyroid, some mild to severe pain. And there will be a slightly elevated thyroxine noticed in the blood, but it's not due to increased production. It's not because the thyroid gland is producing more unless the person happens to have a feeling too slow conflict and a powerless conflict at the same time, which isn't necessarily a common thing, but is definitely possible. So we've got more thyroxine because there is a wider opening. Conflict resolution, no longer feeling powerless or afraid. Natural resolution, or an emotional release or forgiveness, an acceptance of the way things are, letting it be okay, knowing that you are in control of your life, being confident, knowing that this is your life, that it's you are in control, you have the power, and overcoming the fear of cancer. And that's one of the greatest gifts I feel like Dr. Hammer gave people, is being able to know exactly where cancer is coming from, why it's forming. So you don't have to fear it as a random occurrence, something that just attacks you one day, something that just takes over your body, and knowing that your body is programmed for survival, that you can handle whatever happens, feeling resilient, feeling, able to overcome and be able to handle whatever life sends your way, knowing that your thoughts create your reality. All of these things are very much power thoughts, where you feel in control and you feel powerful. And those are the perfect antidote to feeling powerless and afraid. Now, once you have gotten to that state and you're in a state of relief and your body is now healing, there is pain due to swelling. We're in parasympathetic dominance because now we are healing the tissue that was eroded. And so there's pain due to the swelling, difficulty breathing and swallowing. Again, when there's something taking up space in your throat area, it's going to cause some issues with swallowing. This may be diagnosed as a papillary thyroid cancer or a papillary carcinoma. A cyst may form as a result of backup in the fluid duct. It would form this cold nodule, or a euthyroid struma, or a goiter. And so when the swelling occludes this duct, less thyroxine will make it into the blood, although there is sufficient production. So the epileptoid crisis is a little more specific with this particular area because it's a gullet mucosal pattern. And so when you're dealing with the premotor sensory cortex and the healing phase, there are a few specific things that you might expect during the epileptoid crisis, which again is that height of the healing phase. This is when a lot of times people will have overwhelming health symptoms. Something that almost surprising and shocking happens if you're not expecting it, because it's this surge of sympathetic dominance. Some people, this might be a chronic migraine attack. And so you may also have dizzy spells or fainting, muscle spasms, or cramps during the epileptoid crisis. And then once you've squeezed out the edema and the body is continuing to remodel, getting that duct back to its just normal diameter so it can get you back to normotonia. So let's look at a few conditions of the thyroid that people may be aware of. So myxedema is like this classic presentation of hypothyroidism. And when you look up from the conventional medicine point of view, what is it? Why does it happen? It's just underactive thyroid. Hypothyroidism, they look at it as an autoimmune disease. And then you have all of these symptoms: fatigue, sluggishness, weight gain, muscle aches, stiffness, puffy face, thinning hair, slow heart rate, heavy periods, dry skin, depression, constipation, miscarriage, infertility. Now, from the GNM point of view, long-term lasting hypothyroidism, it's not because the body's attacking itself out of confusion or error. The body is responding to healing interruptions due to conflict relapses that results in loss of thyroid tissue. So all hypothyroidism, so this myxedema, all hypothyroidism, there was a period at one point where there was hyperthyroidism. And when the person is hyperthyroid, and you can see during in this conflict active phase of this hanging healing chart, you are hyperthyroid, then you get into this healing phase, but you never finish the healing. And so people, there are tracks and triggers. Your body, at this moment that you had your original conflict of feeling too slow, your body takes a snapshot of everything going on in your environment at the time. The food you're eating, the music that's playing, the people that are around, everything associated with it. And what that means is that your body has triggers. It's got tracks. It is heightened in its awareness at that time because it's about survival. Your body wants to know, okay, if we ever come into contact with this stuff again, we need to be able to rally and make changes right away. And so if it happens to be, and that's how a lot of people will associate things with foods and say, oh, this causes this problem for me because I'm allergic or I have an autoimmune response to these certain foods. It's that you were eating those foods, or those foods were in your system when you suffered this conflict. And so they get notified by your body as a trigger or a track. Realizing this, that the symptoms are a result of prolonged healing and that your body was building up additional thyroid tumor cells and then breaking them down, and then building them back up and breaking them down. And this may result in loss of thyroid gland tissue over time, which would cause you to have hypothyroidism. So the opposite of this is Graves' disease or Basedow, and this is classic hyperthyroidism. And so once again, the conventional medicine view, just an overproduction of thyroid hormones, a malfunction of the immune system. I read a description somewhere that's said that they think it might be an antibody that overrides the normal regulation of the thyroid, causing overproduction. And so there's a signaling agent that comes from the pituitary gland, and that this antibody overrides it, and it causes the body to make way too much. And those are all the typical symptoms of Graves' disease. And from the GNM point of view, remember, it's increased thyroid hormone production. It's purposeful, and it's based on the individual's perception of being too slow. And so this person, if they have not resolved this conflict, and so in the previous example with hypothyroidism, the person has resolved the conflict to some extent, but they keep relapsing into it. Now with Graves' disease, this person is still conflict active because all of these symptoms are conflict active symptoms, sympathetic atonia symptoms of anxiety. This is that fight or flight phase, irritable, weight loss, rapid heartbeat. is something like miscarriage and issues with being able to carry a pregnancy. When you are in fight or flight, when you are in this adaptive survival mode, the body, its priority is not sustaining another life. It's preserving your own life. And so that's why this individual who's suffering with this classic hyperthyroidism needs to get to that healing state, needs to be reminding themselves and meditating and realizing that everything's happening in the perfect time and they can slow down and there's nobody watching them or timing them. Someone that is dealing with this kind of issue, you've got to understand that your body is doing this for a reason. You are sending it the messages. You are perceiving life in a way that's causing your body to speed up. It could be the possibility of the person who didn't have the proper amount of tubercular bacteria, and so they may have resolved the conflict, but they've got additional thyroid tissue cells because they didn't have tubercular bacteria to break it down. And so that is something else to look into. Now, Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is an interesting one. I've seen it talked about quite a bit lately. Conventional medicine views this as autoimmune. And so underactive thyroid, because they say that the body is destroying the thyroid, that there's an overabundance of lymphocytes in the thyroid gland attacking the healthy tissue, causing it, to break down. And they see these thyroid antibodies that they think are attacking just a normal thyroid and attacking itself. So the symptoms of Hashimoto's are kind of misleading from their perspective. I was reading an article by the thyroid pharmacist, and she was talking about how, so typical Hashimoto's is letting you know that your thyroid is being destroyed. And so you would think, okay, my thyroid is being destroyed, so that means I'll have hypothyroidism. I won't have enough thyroid, and so that would mean weight gain, fatigue, all of those symptoms. But some people who are diagnosed with Hashimoto's are thin, irritable, and cold. So they've got symptoms of hyperthyroidism, but they're told that their body is destroying their thyroid so that they will eventually become hypothyroid. And their explanation is that while there is this destruction process of the thyroid, there are toxic levels of thyroid hormone being put into the blood, which is causing the hyperthyroid symptoms. And so from that perspective, they are seeing this as an error. The body is messing up. The body is making a mistake. But the German New Medicine point of view, really, that there can't be autoimmune disease. The body will never attack itself. The body is never hurting itself out of confusion or error. The immune system of antibodies that conventional medicine sees, it's really a support system. It's just what the body is doing. It's not attacking germs or bugs. It's not, it's the body doing something that is specific to the biological special program that is being set off at that time. So the body is responding to healing interruptions. And so it's not ever able to fully finish its healing program due to these conflict relapses, resulting in either the loss of the thyroid gland tissue, like we've mentioned before. So, and that's in the case of the thyroid gland of being too slow. And so the thyroid gland is building up to speed up, and then it's breaking down using the tubercular bacteria, but you keep relapsing into the conflict. And so what that's doing, this constant back and forth, is causing destruction of the thyroid gland tissue. Again, not an error. It's just because you keep relapsing into conflict activity. Or it could be due to decreased circulating thyroid hormone due to this duct being blocked, because you are again relapsing into conflict with the thyroid duct either eroding and then building this healing scab, and eroding and building the healing scab. And so what that's causing is this irregular production of circulating thyroid hormone because the duct is blocked. And so really it's just this different perspective of understanding why the body is doing what it's doing, that it's not random, that it has to do with your individual perception and your body trying to help you. So we finished the 3 different conditions related to the 3 different areas of the thyroid. And so let's talk about just the overview of the 3rd biological law. We've discussed it several times. This is the ontogenetic system of cancer and cancer equivalents. And we saw this displayed knowing that the brainstem related thyroid issues have cell proliferation during conflict activity, and then during the healing phase there is cell removal with the fungi and bacteria. And then the cerebral cortex, the thyroid duct has cell loss during conflict activity. Once the conflict is over, there is tissue restoration in the healing phase. The fourth biological law, again, we saw at play with the tubercular bacteria breaking down the thyroid gland tumor. Remember, diseases are not contagious. Bacteria and fungus are optimizers of the healing phase. They are seasonal workers. They hang out in our body tissues all of the time, and they are awaiting instructions from the brain to go to work. And so if the bacteria are not present when they're needed, the tumors will encapsulate and the tissue will remain. And the fifth biological law, the quintessence, remembering that disease is not an error. Your body is not making a mistake. It's not attacking itself. It's not screwing up. These are all significant biological special programs that are designed and evolved for the greatest benefit of the organism. It took a very long time to get these mechanisms the way that they are, and this understanding of how your body is working in harmony and how your tissues are literally listening to all of your worries, all of your concerns, all the things you're afraid of. Your body is responding and it's trying to help you. You've got this ancient body, and you've got this really new age mind where we think that it's silly that our body would respond in this way, but it's old programming. We've got a really, really old, this tissue evolved for a very long time through many, many different phases of life and many different circumstances that it needed to be prepared for. And so it just prepares in a way that may not make sense to us now, but I'm so glad that Dr. Hammer mapped this out and found this out, because when we connect to it and when we understand what our bodies are doing, we can feel at ease. We can realize, wow, it really is my peace of mind, my relaxation, my relief, my feeling safe, my feeling okay that makes my body go into the healing phase and stay there. And so you don't need to fear disease. You just know that sometimes you'll be surprised by things. Sometimes things will catch you off guard, but the body has a plan. It's got a program. It's just you're not supposed to stay in that state for long periods of time, because then there's additional tissue breakdown, additional tissue adaptation that the body never planned for. The body didn't plan for you to be worried about something years after it happened. The body is ready and prepared for something to happen, take care of it, and then be over it. And so it's our ability to find ease, to relax, to find these states of mind where we're not worried and we're not freaking out, we're not concerned long past things have been resolved. So always remember, there's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. This new medicine is such an amazing concept, such an amazing way of understanding how the body works. And so I'm thankful to Dr. Hammer for discovering it, and I really enjoy making these tutorials for you. If you find that you need any assistance, if you want any help resolving your conflict, finding different and new ways of looking at your problems, understanding what's going on with your healing phase, please contact me at drmelissacell@gmail.com. I have a self-healing support group, which is you healing yourself, but me helping you along and giving you different ways and ideas to think about your problems that you're dealing with so that you can do it with maximal ease and good feelings. So thank you so much for watching. Please share, please like, please comment, please subscribe to my channel so that you get the latest tutorials that are coming out. Thank you.